Again, it's a red stick.
What is going on, guys? Welcome back to C++ tutorial series. In today's video, we're going to talk about global variables. So let us get right into it. Alright, so global variables are actually a very simple thing. The only thing that you need to know about them is that they're accessible everywhere. So we already talked a little bit about scope when we have a function down here. Let's call it int my function. And it does something. I don't know, it returns 0. And we have some variable in here, int x equals 10. Whatever we want to do with that variable, we can do it in here, but we cannot do it in here. So x is not something that we can find here. This is not only because that function is defined down here. It's also the case if the function is defined up here. So we cannot really access x because it does not exist in main. The same way, we can also not access any variables that are inside of main and not inside of my function. So I cannot just go ahead and say int a equals 100. I cannot access a in here, so I cannot say cout a or something. This is just not possible because it's not in the scope. So whatever I do, what I define in here is going to be valid and accessible in that scope. What we define in here is going to be accessible in that scope. But we can also define something up here, global variables. So we can say int x equals 100, for example. We're going to delete this here. And we're going to delete this here. And we can actually go ahead right now and call or access that variable in this myFunction function. So we can go ahead and say std cout x std endline. And we can call my function here. I mean, we could call it if we define it, or we just put it before main. So when we run this here, you're going to see that we can access 100. So this variable up here is accessible everywhere. It's accessible throughout the whole file here, but it's also accessible from other files. And we're going to see what that means in a second. But we can also change it. This is something I want to show to you. We can also go ahead and main and say plus equals 10. And then we're not going to get 100 as a result, but 110. As you can see, 110. So this is clearly accessible throughout the whole file. So in all these different functions, if I open up an if block here or a while loop, it's also going to be accessible inside of that. It's global, so to say. Now we're going to create a directory here, which we're going to call includes, and in here we're going to create a header file and a source file. We're just going to say my file.cpp, and then we're going to have my file.h. We talked about header files in the last video. And let's say we have just a very basic function here, which we're going to call, I don't know, int add to x or something. And we're going to pass an integer here, integer a, or let's call it I, integer I. And what we're going to do is we're just going to return x plus I. Now, what is x? Of course, we don't know what x is, even though it's globally accessible. We cannot just type x and it's going to be recognized here. And of course, we're going to, in the header file, we're going to specify the function signature. So we're going to have an integer add int like that. And here we're going to include the header file. Actually, like that. There you go. We're including the header file, but now still we don't know what that x is. How can I access this x? It's visible, it's possible, but how do we actually specify that? And actually we have already learned that in the storage class video, but we didn't really understand what header files are back then. So we're going to recall that knowledge. It's done by using the extern storage class, the extern keyword. And I think it should be enough to do it here. So we could actually say extern int x, but I'm not sure if this is really the case, if it's really that simple, because I don't think that the source file will be... No, I think we actually need to do it in the C++ file here. So we need to say extern int x in here. If I'm not mistaken, we're not going to do it here. So right now what happens here is we say extern int means that there is this variable int x somewhere. We know it's there, we know it's outside of this class, and we know it's already defined. We don't need to define it. We don't need to initialize it or something. We know it's there and we're just going to use it. So if you know it's there, using the extern keyword to say it's defined somewhere else. In this case, it's defined in CPP. And of course, if we have a bunch of different pairs of CPP file and header files, so just a bunch of different source files and header files, we can use X there as well, because it's accessible, it's global in this file, and it can be used in this file and in any other file that will be linked later on. So let's just go ahead and see if that works. I think that's actually it. We just need to call the function to see it works. So we're going to say not X, but we're going to say add to X. Actually, we need to call this add to X, sorry. There you go. Add to X 10, for example. And we're not going to do this here. There you go. Of course, this will not work because I pressed F6. We learned in the last video how to compile this properly. So we're going to say g++ -o main.exe, and then we're going to say main.cpp and or actually includes myfile.cpp. And when we have done that, we can call main.exe, and you can see we get 110 as a result, because what we do is we call add to X. We pass 10 as a parameter. Here we say X is defined somewhere else, so we're going to find it, and then we get that X that is defined somewhere else and add it or add 10 to it and then return that value. So as you can see, it worked. We can also, of course, do it the other way around. We can also specify one here. We can say int test equals, I don't know, 20, and here I can say extern int test, and I can just go ahead and print it, right? So I can just go ahead and say cout test, and we're going to be able to do that because in the same way, this is a global variable. Now, there's one thing that we can do if we want to have this variable global, but only in this file. So if we want to have a global variable X, let's say here, but we don't want this variable to be as global as it is right now. So we don't want to be able to do this here. We don't want to be able to have it being used in other source files, but we still want to have it defined for the whole file here. So we want to use it in here and everywhere else. We can just go ahead and call this a static int. So we're going to say static int X equals 100, and then we can no longer use it in other files. So I'm not even sure if this will compile, to be honest. Okay, I need to type it again, g++ -o main.exe, main.cpp, and myfile.cpp. And you can see, no, this is not the mistake I was waiting for, includes, there you go. And as you can see right now that there's an undefined reference to X because it is static. If I remove the static, you will see that this is possible. So we can compile it successfully. If we say this is static, it's going to be still global in this file, but not accessible from other files. So that's it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed and I hope you learned something. If so, let me know by hitting the like button and leaving a comment in the comment section down below. And of course, subscribe to this channel and click the notification bell to not miss a single future video for free. Other than that, thank you very much for watching. See you in the next video, and bye.